Welcome back to Why Blank Lost for Big Brother 25. I'm David Bloomberg, and with me once again is my co-host, who probably thought he'd never be on Big Brother again, but actually appeared in this week's veto comp, Ovi Kabir.
Hello, everyone. Yes, you saw me once again on your TV screens in a great way. They really were just like, we love Ovi so much, we need to show him off once again. David, you want to tell them if they missed it, what they should have seen?
I believe your picture was one in the burn book. What was it? The burn book that is what it was listed as. So yes, Big Brother has the nerve to blame you because of the person that they cast who voted out certain types of people right away. And they're so embarrassed by this winner that they won't show his face in their own reel, but I guess they will show your face. So
they will show my face.
Well, that makes you better than him, which we knew anyway.
If I have one defender in this world, if no one else, it is David Bloomberg.
That's right. So who knows? This could be the stepping stone to the next All-Stars.
It could be. And I mean, if anything, they listen to the podcast because they don't like me very much. You can tell that. And more than anything, they probably hate one of David's favorite segments, which we will get into a little bit later.
Yes. But for now, we are here to talk about somebody else again. Someone else who returned. And the thing is, after all these weeks where I start off the podcast by saying, I thought it was going to be locked in, but we actually finally had a week where it was locked in. It is about time. And it's good because I had a lot more notes. Last week I said I only had 1 page of notes for Nicole because she did so little in the game. This week I had close to 7 pages for Cameron just since he returned to the house a couple weeks ago. Okay. There was a lot there because he did so much wrong. Again. And we'll talk about just what that was as we take our usual path of comparing his play to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote in 2004 and have modified ever since. We'll analyze his actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And of course, the most recent version of the rules is posted at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. Now, before getting to the rules, we usually have some other things to discuss about the week in general. For me, this week, there didn't seem to be as much happening other than the Cameron eviction because everyone was on board with it and they were just kind of like waiting for it to happen. And so there were other conversations going on all the time. What should we do in the future? Who should we target in the future? But so many of those conversations just amounted to sound and fury signifying nothing. We know there are 2 pairs, Matt and Jag, Corey and America. And maybe Suri and Felicia are a pair, depending on the day. Blue is trying to work with Suri. Bowie Jane is Bowie Jane. And everyone but Bowie Jane kept talking about aiming at someone or another. But until an HOH is won, it's just so much talk.
Well, David, I don't think we can let this segment go without giving a little props to our resident, we're the biggest fans of Bowie Jane. All right. She did a pretty good week. No blood on her hands. She got the person everybody else wanted to get out in the house, and she finally did it. And if anything, she has something to put on her resume and stamp like, hey, this is what I did. I made a smart move, and I actually have gotten power in the house. So I guess my question for you, David, will you finally give Bowie Jane a little props in the game?
I mean, a little. But she won HOH by accident,
A win is a win. A win is a win.
A win is a win. I don't think she told them it was by accident, although I think they probably knew. But which is kind of funny. I mean, you're like almost like a Charlie Brown character when you can't even throw an HOH right. Like you choose the wrong way to throw an HOH. Instead of going high, you go low. Now, however high she went, I still think Felicia would have gone higher. But still, it was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, it was a good move. Everybody agreed it was a good move, and so the interesting thing is you know if you do what you shouldn't do and read the comments on social media or elsewhere, many people are saying, she just did what it was really Jags HOH. So the question is, what do the people in the House feel like?
Mhm.
If Bowie Jane makes it to the end, are they going to give her any props, or are they going to say, that was just us?
That's a good, that's a good word right there. I think it's interesting though, because now she does have something to
Mm-hmm.
kind of show on, and which I kind of like is that yes, there are players in the house right now that I think have a lot more equity of their game going forward.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel like that each person in the house has some form of an argument, and as the next few weeks go by, I think we have some players who we thought might not be able to build up a resume have done at least some amount of work where
Mm-hmm.
things could be interesting in this end game.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to see how this coming week goes with the invisible HOH. We'll have our spoiler-free predictions at the end, but uh, yeah, it'll we'll see. We'll see if it circles back to Bowie Jane or not, or what the heck is going on there. I mean, it's amazing. We have less than a month left, which I mean, it sounds like a short period considering we've already been through more than 2 months. And considering how many people are there, it's like dragging it out, and then
So
boom,
many.
boom, boom, they're gonna be heading out the door.
It really truly has feel like this whole season. Like I feel like I've been covering this for
Mhm.
the whole year,
Yeah.
and I mean it just hasn't ended, and now we're finally, thankfully, knock on wood, on the jury segment.
Yes. Yes. So, all right. Well, other than Bowie Jane, did you have anyone else you wanted to talk about before we get to our regular segment?
No, I'm happy to go into the regular segment that I think has turned CBS against me.
Yes. And this will only help turn them against you because it's time for Julie Chung
Good.
Moonves is wrong about blank. And once again, Julie gave an example why nobody should ever go to her when it comes to anything involving strategy. Because Dalton Ross again asked Julie, and I'm not saying Dalton shouldn't ask. If Dalton stopped asking, we'd lose a bunch of material. I'm saying, and listeners, readers, anyone else, you can see what she has to say and then point and laugh and come listen to us. But um, he asked Julie why Cameron lost, essentially. And the first words that she said were, I don't really think it's his fault. Excuse me, but what the hell? This is the
Ugh.
most clueless thing, perhaps, that she's ever said about Big Brother. And that is saying something. If anyone ever wanted more evidence that Julie doesn't pay any attention, there you have it. I mean, I know we haven't started going through the rules yet, but spoiler alert, it is 100% his fault.
I'm dying over here listening to you. I think this one is unequivocally probably one of Julie's biggest ones of our segment where
Yeah.
she's gotten it wrong. I mean, in general, when you get voted out, very few times it isn't your fault. More than anything, there's always some form of segment in there. And I think with Cameron himself, this is not his first time he's gotten voted out,
Yeah.
mind you. This is his second time. And I just think, I know Cameron right now currently is the casuals king, where people who love just watching the show,
Mm-hmm.
they love Cameron. They love a fighter. And I have in the past given Cameron props for the way he's fought in the game. And I actually might be a little kinder to Cameron in certain segments of our rules than David will be today. But more than anything, I think it's impossible to say that the actions Cameron has taken in the game haven't negatively, in fact, impacted him and
Yeah.
made the reason for him to be voted out. I mean, uh,
Yeah. I mean,
it's apparent.
yeah. So then she continued by saying, this group is the most flip floppy, non committal group I've ever seen. No bond feels deep or real except between mother and son, Suri and Jared. Now, one, none of that had anything at all to do with Cameron leaving. And in fact, it goes directly against it because, as we're going to discuss, getting rid of him was the one thing that all these supposedly non committal people agreed on. So, she's just putting together these non sequiturs. And then she closed by saying, That said, Cameron talking too much probably did contribute to him having no real allies in the House. Okay, so first she says it's not his fault. Then she admits he had no allies. Okay. But really, about the talking too much, this is literally just her restating what he said to her in his interview when he walked out the door. Like, she didn't even think about it. She didn't use a single brain cell to consider it. She just took what he said and spit it back to Dalton. Come on, get an original thought.
I think if we really look at it too, I mean, we will get into this part, but since this isn't a specific rule, I kind of want to mention it here. And she talks about how really it was the only ally he had was Red, and who was evicted basically, I want to say day 28 or 30.
Yeah.
And that's a whole month before he left this past Thursday.
Or he had a whole bunch of other allies. He just turned on them.
He turned on them. But I mean, that's the thing, is he didn't make an effort. There was a level of disconnect where he just said, all right, no, and that's your own fault. That comes to me. There's a reason why. And it wasn't just because of how he talked, it was how he acted as well. It's
as we'll discuss. Now, Julie, after that, decided to put a cherry on top of her wrongness Sunday. In her answer to another question, when Dalton mentioned the segment about Matt getting emotional about his difficulty hearing people whispering, and asked what she makes of how well he's doing in a game that's all about whispers and secrets. And the first part of her answer was, it may be a blessing in disguise for him that he can't be part of the whispering going on in the house. Removing himself from all those conversations could be a saving grace. What? She's basically saying ignorance is bliss, and it's better in a strategic social game to not be part of the strategy and the socializing. Again, did she not pay any attention to that segment? Because if it weren't for Jag relaying information to him, Matt could be in a much, much worse place. Now I have faith in Matt that he'd find some way, but it's, again, to say, oh, he may be better off because he can't participate. I don't even understand that.
It's just strange. I mean, we've talked about this for a very long time. I mean, Matt is my winner pick for it. And I think the idea that he's done so well with all the obstacles he's had to face in the house is already a testament to how good he is at the game. And I just think that's kind of I don't know. I think it's taking away his level of skill that he has used to navigate everything. To say, all right, because it's he's had to remove himself from those situations. It's an advantage versus saying, actually, he has navigated these obstacles so well that he's at the place he is. Versus that he's already had a predetermined advantage in. And I just think that's it's a weird, icky way to phrase and display what Matt has done in the game.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, sometimes it may seem like we're harsh on her, and I know, just thinking about what I just said, it may sound harsh what I said, but come on, use your head, Julie, really. So anyway, we'll move on here, and eventually to someone else who didn't use their head. By the way, you mentioned that your winner pick is Matt, and of course everyone should remember that my winner pick is Suri. Oh, well, at least it became Suri after she came into the house and we saw what Cameron was acting.
Hey, that's fine. I'll still give you Suri because I took a second winner pick as Izzy, and that unfortunately flamed out there. So I'll let you ride out with Suri. We'll see how it goes. I still have good confidence in Matt right now, though.
All right. Well, we'll see. Now, before we get to the rules, I want to mention that the Survivor version come in a shorter and much more colorful version. In poster form, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster and click on it. And of course, in addition, you can get the poster on a t-shirt or the checklist on a t-shirt. And the checklist, of course, very similar to the Big Brother rules. And not exactly, but very similar. You can use a marker, but don't do that. I'm just kidding. I mean, unless you want to. But again, you can go and order them at robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeed. why X lost feed. Oop, need to get rid of that. Now, how bad is it to not just get backdoored and voted out unanimously for a second time, but for it to happen when Bowie Jane is HOH, and you believed that you had made a solid ally out of her, but didn't see how poorly you were playing even with her? How bad is it to fight to come back into the house only to be sent packing again right away? How bad is it for players who can't agree on anything to come together with one goal in mind? And that goal is to get rid of you. Cameron faced all of these situations, and despite what Julie said, it most definitely was his fault. It's time to discuss why Cameron lost again.
Oh, what an intro right there. What a monologue.
Now, the first and most important rule is, of course, to scheme and plot. Last time, so that would be 2 weeks ago, roughly 3 weeks ago, I noted that Cameron understood this idea in theory and attempted to put it into practice, but he wasn't actually good at it. And the same is true this time. Last time, we discussed how he was certain he knew everything about where everyone stood, what their plans were, and had a complete misread, like to the point that he believed Jared was his ally. We can say that again this time, except substitute in Bowie, Jane, Matt, and Jag for Jared. So now it was, I don't know, do you consider that 3 times as worse when you think 3 people are your allies and none of them are? I think Felicia said it best when she told Suri on the live feeds that nobody hangs out with Cameron except when he's the HOH. Basically, people only flocked to him when he had power. But he couldn't see it. He thought he was doing a great job of correcting some of his previous flaws by actually trying to work with people this time. He thought that he would split Jag and Matt from the others. But in fact, he took a pair that was already standing out and made them reunite with the others to get rid of him again.
Exactly. I mean, his game, I think this is a reason why a lot of Big Brother players, or not Big Brother, excuse me, a lot of viewers actually liked Cameron's game is because he played a brute force game. His game was really, truly no finesse. It was completely just, let me see how much I can power through this. So the issue you have is that that's kind of the antithesis of scheming and plotting. The goal is scheming and plotting is so you can still do this when you don't have power. And more than anything, when you have power, you can use that as a catalyst to increase your scheming and plotting. But what we saw is that when Cameron had that power, he didn't utilize his scheme and plot. He just wanted to dictate his rule going forward. And then again, we look at this game through this a lens of these rules with an eye of objectivity. That's the goal. And when you do a game of brute force, it might work for you at times, but most times it's going to end earlier than later. And that's what we saw with Cameron. I mean, he had 2 chances the way he was playing the game where he kept trying. And when we saw that he got voted out, came back in, we were hoping there'd be a reset. There might be a little bit more scheming and plotting going on. What we actually saw, though, and I think last week we were actually hopeful where we were like, maybe he is trying something new in here there, but quickly reverted because the scheming and plotting was very quickly about, I don't want to skip rules, but emotional wise. So he didn't really view it strategically in the ways he needed to.
Yeah, I mean, he tried, even besides Matt and Jag, he tried to pull the wool over most of the others' eyes as well. Last time I mentioned how Jared said Cameron's big problem was he underestimates everyone else's intelligence in the game, and that continued to be true, as was his inability to see when people were not buying what he was selling, which was pretty much all the time. He would tell someone something to try to get them to turn on another player, and instead they just go to that person or sometimes a middleman who would relay the message. And, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what Cameron just told me. He just thought people would believe him and never compare notes.
Yeah. In a house where that's all you do, and especially as it gets like less and less. And I think another dynamic to think about is it's so much more even important in a game as long as this, where we have a full 100 days in here, where you also know that there's going to be less. There's going to be a smaller jury, so that emphasizes people's, caution to double check things, to not play without blunder. So you have to know that things are going to get around. And also, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know when you tell one side of the showman's when he talks to America about all this stuff of him wanting to get rid of Corey, what it's going to do,
Right.
I mean, he got kind of lucky in the instance that America still utilized some of that to her own benefit. But and she still went back to Corey and told him, but in most instances, that's a immediate target on you.
Yeah, yeah. Now, speaking of Corey, one thing that I didn't really want to bother bringing up, but feel like I have to, is some of his fans have said that his big mistake was listening to Matt and Jag last week and not backdooring Corey. And in some of the interviews, he also said that he should have done that. The thing is, that wouldn't have changed the outcome for Cameron one bit. In fact, the main reason that Matt was in favor of pushing Cameron to backdoor Corey was it would make Cameron an even bigger target for this week, so they could take him out right away. So the idea that taking out Corey would have somehow helped him, no, it wouldn't have benefited him at all. All that it would mean was Corey would be out of the game too. Cameron would still be sitting right where he is in the jury house. And, but the thing is, once Bowie Jane became HOH, Cameron thought he was in a great spot. So much so that he pushed her to do what he wanted, which was funny because earlier, and I think even saw this in a short clip on the show, he walked in on a conversation of other people, and they said, "Oh, we're just talking about nominations," and he made a snarky comment like, "Oh, is one of you the secret HOH?" And so it was, when other people had thoughts and were talking about it, then he was an ass about it. When he had thoughts, he believed he should control what Bowie Jane did. And in a way, he might have impacted her because he previously had been against backdooring anyone. We saw it in his first go round. He was very adamant, you don't backdoor someone. But suddenly, he was in favor of it. Why? Well, because he wanted to backdoor Corey. But by bringing up the topic at all, he opened the back door. And, that gave Bowie Jane options. Now, I'm not saying she wouldn't have done it otherwise, because she might have, but he certainly helped.
Yeah, no, I think building off of that is you need true allies to build off of things, right? And he didn't have true allies in the house, and that's kind of a issue of his own. But I think to have a true ally in the house, it's when you scheme and plot, you have to empower others. You need to empower them to feel like their moves are the best moves for themselves, because if you don't convince them or try to display the action that you want to take, that it's actually in the benefit of the other player, they're not going to go with it. And I think that was the issue a lot we saw with Cameron scheming plotting, because it was very Cameron centric. It was very evident that this move is the best for Cameron to do, even when it actually sometimes wasn't. But the way he displayed it was the best move for him.
Right.
And so that was the continual issue. And I think that's such a crux when we talk about this week. I mean, we talk about week 1, week 2, week 3, where he has truly been on fire, where people have been trying to get him out and they decide not to, then get him out and decide not to. It caught up to him because eventually he's telling other people that we should get out their own allies versus getting out their enemies. And that's the issue. You need to figure out where to steer the cannon at. And he just never did that.
Yeah. And then eventually, of course, it got pointed at him. And we'll talk more about why she decided to do that in the second rule. But Cameron started to get a bad feeling after Jag won the veto, but before it was actually used. And he tried to convince Bowie Jane to tell Jag not to use it, and then told America everybody was gunning for Corey, so she should tell Jag not to use it. What he didn't know was literally everyone, except maybe Blue, was working together against him. So he's telling these people like he's just not seeing the big picture of everyone being against him. Then alcohol came into the house on Sunday, and America got drunk and basically confirmed to Cameron that Jag would use the veto and he was going up. Now, she might have told him the same thing even if she was sober, but because there was some discussion of who's going to eventually break it to him, but she was definitely tipsy when she told him. So his response was to spill Matt and Jag's secrets and promise to go to Final Three with her and Corey, which even in her state, having alcohol in her system, she noted it was awful convenient timing on his part to say that. Like, oh, now you want to do that. Meanwhile, as much as some of his big fans talk about what a great player he is, he didn't make the play he should have made. He didn't do the scheming he should have done. Taryn pointed out on the Roundtable podcast that Cameron didn't even make the right plays when he had the chance. After that conversation with America, he had a brief conversation with Bowie Jane, which he also handled terribly. And then he went back to whine to America some more when he should have been continuing to try to get Bowie Jane to change her mind. Okay. Could he have done it? I don't know. Maybe it's possible. Even if it's unlikely, even if he had a 5% chance, that was still a better chance than getting anywhere by complaining to America about it. You're complaining to someone who has no control. Go talk to the person who has actual control.
Yeah, I mean, it's this idea that I think truly he believes that he can have a conversation and change the whole dynamic of it. And we saw this week in and week out from week one to now that the reason why he was safe was because of his competition abilities. And the issue is that as it continues to go more and more, right, he was thinking that his competition abilities were his scheming and plotting. He felt like one came before the other. In fact, though, he was able to scheme and plot and actually make moves because he was winning these competitions. But this, and I don't want to talk about the threat level too much because we'll get to that. But as we see as the game proceeds, he needs to take a backseat a little bit more and have the conversations that you kind of talk about, where when he's going with Bowie Jane, it needs to be a lighter hand. And honestly, I feel like if he sat back just a little bit more and let things happen, and do a little less, which I think will kind of get us into our rule 2. I don't know how much more you might have.
Well, a little less sometimes. In the one particular example I just mentioned, he needed to do more. That was the thing. He did things at the wrong time. He did less when he should have done more and more when he should have done less. So yeah, we can move into the second rule, which of course says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. And last time we talked a fair amount about Cameron playing too hard. And and I do need to bring this up again, that his stands loved it because it was fun for them to watch. I guess it was a little less fun for them to watch him go out the door. I know it was more fun for them to watch him come back because they were in my comments like, ha, he's back. That shows he's a good player. No, it doesn't. It shows that he was saved by a twist and he's headed back out soon, as ended up being true. But, I said then, there's a difference between good play and play that can be good on our screens. Or, as Corey told Cameron when Cameron pitched something to him, that's a big TV move. That's not a path forward. And people just have to remember that those are two separate things. Yes, something can be great on TV and horrible game move. And, we've talked about it before, so I don't want to go over it all over again, but especially with Cameron, you have to keep that in mind. And once he was back in the house, especially once he was back in the HOH room, the old Cameron came back out again. It's not like anyone had forgotten how he over-schemed to begin with, but he made it worse because he behaved similarly, which reminded them of the old Cam. It was bad enough that the house guests several times were talking about how he revealed information about Riley and her alliance back in the first week. Jag noted he was disloyal 3 days into the game for no reason. Matt said he was acting the same as back then. They're 70 days into the game, And they're talking about what happened more than 2 months ago because Cameron showed he's still the same
Mhm.
player, still trying to turn everyone against each other, forgetting that everyone talks to each other. They cross-referenced all his lies, old and new. And, like Jag said, it was clear Cam was saying things about everyone.
I mean, there's a difference, right? Where we can also enjoy a TV character. We can enjoy somebody's TV excitement they bring in,
Mhm.
and as a viewer, I think it's very exciting. And if you didn't see some other parts of Cameron, to be able to root for Cameron because he is winning and he's an underdog. We always
Mhm.
love a good underdog story, but the issue is within these rules, right? We're trying to figure out how they can win. This is how they get this. And if you take Cameron's game, and I'm very confident in this, and
Mhm.
if you play the same game in different iterations, he goes out much earlier than this now. It's a game that you can't win out like that.
Right.
Because Big Brother's a little different than Survivor, right? Where Survivor truly, I mean, it's tough, but you can Mike Holloway your way to the end. It's not
Right.
easy by any means, but you can win out
Mhm.
competitions. Big Brother has a concerted effort where you can have other people make sure you don't play in competition. You can make sure that you get backdoored. Like
Mhm.
there's certain things you can't control in Big Brother because the odds are against your favor because it's such a longer game. So to try to win out like this doesn't work. And I say all
Right.
this because he relied on winning to overplay his hand. He thought that he had more money he could bet on because
Yeah.
he had these competition abilities. But as he was overplaying his hand was when he was taking um, taking conversations and telling other people, it was going around the house, especially when you have such a small group now here. I mean, key example is telling everyone essentially that America, that he wants to go against Corey. That's
Mhm.
going to go get around. Telling Matt information about somebody else, it just keeps going around, and we just saw that catch up to him.
Yeah, I mean, in his post-game interview with Dalton Ross, Cameron said his biggest flaw in the game was he spoke too freely on occasion with specific people with the understanding that certain words weren't going to go beyond their conversation. Now, he said it was his biggest flaw. I wouldn't say it was his biggest. It was certainly one of them. And, the biggest part of that error was ever believing that what he said would stay between him and whoever he told. It's amusing to me that he continued by saying it wasn't that they turned around and told someone else immediately. It was just that their view of me changed once I spoke on a particular topic. Now, he doesn't realize it yet because he's in the jury house, but actually sometimes they did literally turn around and run and tell someone immediately. Like you said, if he talks to America, it's going to go to Corey. But he's talking about some of these other things. Like he talked to Jag and Matt, and he thought that those were secret conversations. It's Big Brother. There is no such thing as a secret conversation. You have to assume it is going to be told. Don't say anything you don't want plastered, on across the TV set in the living room, because that's essentially what's going to happen.
And I think I'm going to take it back to a little thing we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
where he did the inverse of when he needed to do something else. In this
Yeah.
rule, right? Whether he was talking too much, sometimes he kept things too much a secret. We talk about when he was making nominations where he puts up remind me right now, he put up it's
Felicia and Izzy, but he said he was
Felicia,
going
yeah.
to, yeah,
And so, sorry, it was blanking in my head.
yeah,
But when he kept it a complete secret right
right.
there, the issue is, again, it makes great TV. We love watching it,
Mhm.
and like you said, how Corey said, is a great TV move, but like the longevity of a game, it doesn't help that.
Yeah.
That's the issue. Is that if you keep things too secret, you don't create bonds with other people. You don't let them in there. And that was the issue with players. They didn't know what he was telling was completely, whether he was telling them and other people, or he was keeping it until to himself. I think it's like, I put it to analogy. I know David is the king of analogies, but I liken it to this one, is that I had a friend, right? And they would call everyone their best friend. And
Mm.
I felt very close with them, but I couldn't ever gauge my closeness truly with them because the way they acted with me was the way they acted with somebody else, because it was very similar.
Mhm.
And I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was hard to gauge those conversations I really want to have with them, because then they would tell me things about people they would say they're best
Right.
friends. And so you're kind of wary, how much should I tell them, because I feel
Right.
close to you, but just because there's no specific treatment we're having that's our own relationship, it doesn't happen. I think that was the issue with Cameron. He wasn't able to create unique relationships with each house guest individually as the game progressed.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying about his keeping secrets and all that, I mean, it goes back to the chaos, because he was chaotic by his own admission. And so if you're a player, you never know, like you said, you never know where you stand with someone. You never knew if you might be in danger from him. They knew he might say he'd help someone, but he lied all the time. Chaos is not good gameplay, because nobody would ever trust him.
No, scary.
Yeah, and even with all this going on, Bowie Jane wasn't quite ready to completely turn on Cameron at first. She clearly wanted to get him out, but she felt her sense of loyalty or honesty or whatever wouldn't allow her to actually put him on the block. It was funny because she was literally searching for excuses to do it, to the point where, like, whenever anyone would say something about him, she would be like, "Oh, that's good." Anyone else would just be like, "Okay, he's going on the block. I want him on the block. He's on the block." But she was like, a lawyer looking for a loophole.
Mhm.
Like, I can't nominate him unless he's done something to me. You wouldn't happen to know anything he's done to me. Wink, wink, hint, hint. Yeah, I mean, finally Cameron said something negative about her to Jag, who immediately ran it back to her. But she was just looking for it. And Cameron even referenced this as the move he made that ruined his game when he was talking to Julie and saying he let paranoia creep in and he said the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time. He thought, what he had said was, he thought Bowie Jane was in with Corey in America, and he voiced it instead of asking her. I guess we can thank Nicole's parting words for helping to implant that. And then he blamed himself. And to me, the funny thing is, this is the one thing he shouldn't blame himself for. I mean, yes, the whole loss he is to blame for, despite what Julie said, but not for this particular part, because I have no doubt if he hadn't said that to Jag, they would have just made something up or slightly adjusted something he'd said to ensure Bowie Jane had the loophole that she needed.
Yeah, I mean, they were looking for something, and I mean, it just comes back down to really the structures of his game, where he took out other people who are powerhouses. He overplayed. He didn't want to. And I mean, we talk about his first time he got voted out. We think about how much information he clearly shared, who he targeted, and what led to his initial eviction was because he continuously would leak information from one side to the other side. Because after Red went away, it really damage his game. And I mean, we talk about this when we were talking about Suri and Co, which right now is basically Suri. We're at this game, and I felt like it was a bad move at that point to get Red out because Cameron was, he trusted them. He kind of had his own feelings, but he still trusted them. And so even though it was detrimental to their game, it was really detrimental to his game. But he was never able to recover from that. He was never able to figure out a way to fake that trust. And I mean, again, I understand why a lot of people watching might enjoy his game style, where they're like, well, you backstabbed him, and now he is going to come for revenge and get all of you, no matter what. And again, it's a burning man, right? He will set people around him on fire, but at the end of the day, he will set himself on fire with that too. It's not a long-lasting game.
There's a reason the shirt I'm wearing is a nuclear explosion that says it seemed like a good idea at the time. That is Cameron. That is completely. I wore this a few episodes ago about when they blew up the vote, and we didn't have anyone to talk about because it was supposed to be Jag. But this time, Cameron is the nuclear bomb. Now, you were talking about what allies he had and didn't have, and another aspect goes again to Bowie Jane was the way he treated her as a supposed ally. He tried to make her feel guilty after she backdoored him because he had always protected her. But the thing was, he had said several times that he was taking her to the end, and it came off as being like, I'm taking you to the end whether you want me to or not. I've seen the term non-consensual final two floating around. I've seen it so much I can no longer remember if it was something that someone actually said on the live feeds, or it was the live feed viewers who said it and spread it around social media. I suspect the latter, but I can't guarantee it. And
that's fine.
yeah. And so the thing was, it clearly didn't sit well with her. And if she had gotten to the end with him somehow, there probably would have been a perception that he carried her there. I'm sure he would have pushed that narrative, no matter how much he would have said, oh, you're my ally. As soon as they got there, he would have been like, I carried you. But now, like you said earlier, she can take credit for eliminating the most wanted player. Whether the others give her credit is another matter, but she could take credit.
Mm-hmm. She has that title on there.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, you want to move to rule 3 on here?
Before leaving this rule, I want to address one more thing, because it's a comment I often see.
Okay.
I'm sure we mentioned something like this the first time, but it's worth noting again, because so many Cameron fans will see others talking about him lying, and they'll be like, lying is what you're supposed to do in Big Brother. Yes, it is. Lying without getting caught. That last part's really, really important. And I do believe we said it before, but I feel like we need to say it again, because he failed there.
I think it's a good. I will always love David addressing commentators. Like, that's like my favorite. The comments. We need a segment for that. David addresses the comments.
This podcast would be too long. And I don't know where they're all going to go with Cameron gone now. They all say it's going to get boring and they're not going to watch anymore. So, who knows? Now, the third rule talks about the need to be flexible. Last time we blew through this rule quickly because Cameron just wasn't flexible. This time he showed he was trying to be flexible by taking into account what his supposed allies, Matt and Jag, wanted to do. But even in that situation, he kept, pushing like a toddler, asking why he can't have a cookie. Please, 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 please. I want you to do this. I want you to do this. He did the same thing with Bowie Jane when she said that she wouldn't backdoor Corey. He just couldn't stand it when other people had their own thoughts and ideas.
I think it goes back down to the empowering others, right? To be flexible, you also have to be okay to have a conversation where, hey, it might not be going the way you want, but you can have faith that can steer that way. You can kind of, I always love this, saying when we talk about like defenses, whether it's football, bend, don't break, like let the field goal go. Don't let them get the touchdown if a play has happened. And the issue
with the football teams I root for, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, that is true.
Mine is break and break again.
Break again. Yeah, I mean, I support the balls, and ours is just score and hopefully try to outscore them and just forget about defense. But this season different, but that's a different podcast. That's a different day.
Yeah.
With Cameron,
why our football teams lost, a different podcast.
Yeah, why are too many reasons?
Yes.
With Cameron, the issue is he would never be flexible enough for that. When he would let it, when it broke, the point, his emotions, himself would break himself there. He would rage. He would let other people know that he's upset. And again, we did give him kudos this past week when he got voted out, and we saw him come back in, and he kind of was trying to be chill. He was trying to be like, let me figure out how to do this. Let me take a back seat. Unfortunately, it just felt like it didn't last. And I almost wish we could have got the Cameron who was, what do they call it? A scary versus ghost, or a zombie? Sorry, a zombie. Yes. I wish we could have had that level of Cameron with his flexibility and that character in the house when he was actually in the house.
Well, yeah, and that you've taken us to the next question, which is the fourth rule, and not letting their emotions control them. And I was going to ask you what you thought, but you've already answered it. So I think. I agree with you. When he came back to the house, he tried to put his emotions aside more. He didn't have as strange outbursts like when he lied to the whole house, that previous time. But he did have some emotional outbursts, and his emotions definitely affected the way he acted overall, especially as his stress level rose. But I really think those are better addressed in the result of that stress level rising, which is the fifth rule, because it says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. We saw him get mad at Bowie Jane at the end of the veto meeting. He had other times when he definitely said things he shouldn't have. People who only watch the TV shows may not realize what Cameron is truly like in the house. Because as Taryn said in Thursday's episode recap, producers have gone out of their way to make him look smarter, better at the game, nicer, more of a stand-up guy. Even with the Zingbot calling him a major effing tool and all the other house guests agreeing wholeheartedly in the diary room, it doesn't even begin to fully address the way he has behaved. I mean, he admitted before being booted the first time, I know I can come off as a cocky asshole. I agreed with him at the time. I still agree with him. And, last time I also added that he could be intense and creepy and weird. Here we are again.
It doesn't change. And I want to talk a little combination. I know we're kind of jumping here.
Yeah.
With the don't let emotions control you, but also pretend to be nice. I think these kind of go hand in hand. What I want to say. Yeah, with him, it all combines. I think we have mentioned it before that this cast is kind of unique in the way where I feel like they can take things a little bit more on the chin. We've seen outbursts, we've seen some fights where most of the players here just let, they're like, all right, I'm going to still work with you. I'm going to put that aside and we're going to let that be. And so we've seen a higher level of maybe emotional outbursts where there hasn't been as many consequences immediately from it. And I wonder, that maybe with Jared being in the house with Cameron at the time, they both kind of, we've talked about it, had emotional outbursts on things. The way they acted sometimes wasn't being very nice. So we had kind of a higher tolerance on the house because they're like, multiple people are acting like this. This is the tolerance as a social group, But I think as people can tell, like in our real life, when you have friend groups, right? When you take certain people out of that friend group, the element, the dynamics, they all change a little bit, Maybe the tolerance for something gets a little lesser, or maybe it gets a little bit more. It might be, we might be having more fun or maybe less.
Right.
I think when we had less of Jared in the house now, we had Cameron kind of stick out like a sore thumb in the sense that he was the one who was just like, being a little mean here and there, not playing the social game well. He was having outbursts. And that in itself made it a bigger issue for the house because the dynamics have changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't think only the dynamics changed because I think Cameron changed also because after he left, normally we don't talk about anything that happens afterwards. This is not a spoiler, though, because it's something that Felicia was talking to Bowie Jane about Cameron and said he was unaware that his personality changed week to week. And I think she's probably right. His intensity changed depending on the situation. And as I said, I think his stress level. This links back, like you said, to controlling his emotions. Last week, when we were discussing why Nicole lost, and you mentioned this earlier, I said Cam wasn't pushing through like a bull in a china shop this time. No sooner had I said that than he once again started doing it, trying to get Bowie Jane to do what he wanted, despite making it clear that it's not what she wanted to do. And his poor social game started to bloom even before that. He railed against Felicia to Bowie Jane, going on and on about how he could barely hold back how much he basically hated her. And he was going to let loose once he won HOH. So this was while at the end of him being a zombie, basically. He was going to let loose once he got HOH and she was nominated. And then he talked to Matt in America about it. He was upset about Felicia giving Corey a pretend lap dance for his birthday, like all these little things. I don't know, of all the people that you're going to rant and rave about someone to, I don't know what made him think Bowie Jane would be the right one. Because Bowie Jane doesn't like the drama. She doesn't like lies. She doesn't like talking about people. She doesn't like a lot about Big Brother, but she especially doesn't like the drama. So why would he rant to her? It shows a lack of understanding of social dynamics there.
No, you're completely right, and I think, this is going to be something that I think people are going to be upset to hear about because they haven't seen it as much. But it was apparent we saw from week 1, week 2, week 3 was kind of how Cameron and so on. Not just stop there, but the way Cameron interacted with a lot of the women in the house.
Oh yeah,
he just made them feel, and I don't even want to say uncomfortable. They said it was uncomfortable, but it was rude. And that was the thing, his vernacular, the way he talked with Red about, how what they're wearing, they shouldn't be wearing things like that. And it made them, less of a woman or different, in different words. The issue with that is that would get around the house. And these are controversial beliefs, right? Regardless of whether you agree with it or not. You don't need to have it put out there. I don't think it's right. I don't agree with it. But regardless of it, it's like, just don't put, whatever you think, don't put it out there. And I think it would be remiss to ignore this and say that, like, this didn't have an impact on how people wanted to work with him,
Right.
Because,
I just want to jump in. One example of something because people might say, well, he said that before.
Yeah.
We're talking about now, which still, I mean, it's still all one big picture. But even when he came back, Corey said that Cameron made a crazy comment recently saying information gets around the house faster than America. And remember, he had called America fast before. And, to the point that, he had all these, once he won HOH, he was back to form. He was making these icky comments. And even Bowie Jane said he can't be good for more than 7 days.
His zombie time.
Yeah. And Cameron told Julie, we saw this after he was evicted, I probably talked too much. Well, there was no probably about it. And he said if he could play again, he'd take advice from Suri. You don't always have to tell someone what you think of someone else. Well, there's a couple things. I believe that she was speaking more strategically. For him, it was strategically and socially.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's possible for him to actually live by that advice, first of all. Suri was right. He should have done it because, he said various things about almost everyone to almost everyone. And he was feeling more comfortable. And the more comfortable he got, the more in power, I guess I should say, then it empowered him to say whatever he wanted. And that's, how we ended up back at those same icky comments again.
And I think, and I'm going to move on unless you have some more things to add here. But I feel like...
Well, I still have more for the fifth rule, if that's what you mean. But...
Yeah. Well, I was going to talk about a different topic in the fifth rule here.
Okay,
but,
go ahead.
I think, like you said, it empowered him to feel this way. And we have this thing where you have to take the dynamics of the house in account, right? You have to figure out who you're talking to, how you're talking to. I mean, and we talk about how his feelings are within the house guests that are left, right? But we have to think about the house guests who have been gone, right? From Izzy to Nicole, all these players right here, right? That he made them feel some weird way, just like the way he was, like his controversial beliefs, all these things like that. Not even his game style, because I think people can honestly appreciate a true hitter. Like, you're honest about it. You want to go after me. I don't mind. And I don't think people had an issue really with that, except maybe Jared, right? That you go at me, you're going for it. I can appreciate you doing that. You're telling me straight up. The issue was him outside of the game style there. And when you have those type of feelings, right? When you have those type of things against him, even if you're left out of the house, you have house guests who are your past allies. Felicia, you have Sari, people who are going to hold on to those feelings that he impacted on those house guests who already left. I mean,
I think Matt's still holding on to Riley, they're angry about Riley.
Exactly. And then in another example, that's why we have Sari really just gunning for Corey, right? Because of her taking out Jared, they're a specific case right there, mother and son.
Yeah.
But those relations are still there.
Yeah. I mean, basically, nobody could stand Cameron. They all wanted him out. Like Felicia had a conversation with him about how she talked to him every day. And he said he was made out to be the evil monster in the house. No, Cameron, you weren't made out to be that way. You made yourself come off that way. And so, I do want to, say last time I noted that once he realized he was going the first time, he started to relax a bit. I think the stress levels went down because there was nothing to be stressed about because he was headed out the door. He even was telling jokes. The same thing happened this time. Again, I think it's related to his stress level. And once there was no stress because his goose was cooked, it made him calmer. There was nothing he could do. I, for many years, worked for a boss who, whenever she would get stressed, took it out on everyone around her, including me, sometimes especially me. And so you could always tell, what her stress level was. Didn't matter if it was home or work. If something stressful was going on at home, she took it out on people at work. Something stressful was going out at work, she took it out on people at work. So, and he just in many ways reminds me of that. He gets stressed, he becomes worse to other people. And I'm not saying it's unique to either of them, but we have seen it repeatedly here.
Mm-hmm.
And when he wasn't stressed, he got calmer. He accepted his fate. He had a little bit of humor about it. Like on the live feeds, Felicia told him, "Oh, today may be the last day for you in the backyard." And he was like, pretend surprised. Like, what? Are you saying you're going to vote me out? What a way to tell somebody, and she's dying laughing over there. And, he also showed humor on his way out with his final speech, where he was like,
Mm-hmm.
I will be loyal to all of you. I will never lie to any of you. I will never vote for any of you. I will throw all just obvious jokes.
Yeah.
And if he could have been like that the whole time, he would have had a much higher likelihood of sticking around. Even with everything else,
Mm-hmm.
if he were just pleasant to be around, he would have had a much higher likelihood of sticking around.
Yeah, no, I think it's that's what you put around your team, right? Are the people you like around you, and I think that's a testament. I mean, like you don't want to be around people, that you don't like. Like I always think about back, when I would travel with some buddies or people. You have big groups, and you would try to make the cost lower, right? You would like bunk up in a hotel or Airbnb, grab some stuff. But sometimes I would just eat the cost because I hated some of these folks. I didn't want to, travel with them. And we had the big groups of people. Oh, do you see that? I got a little thumbs up right there.
You did. You gave yourself a thumbs up. That's very weird.
We're finding
Can we do that? Can we give a thumbs up? I don't know how that works.
That's we're learning new features as we go.
Okay.
StreamYard.
For anybody listening, just a virtual thumbs up just appeared on Ovi's screen, and we don't know why. One time he made it do fireworks. I remember that.
Interesting.
So
I need to figure out what this is, because unfortunately, or fortunately, agrees with what I'm saying. The end of the day is you want to be with people. Like sometimes you will go out of your way, right? Even it makes it more difficult for you because you don't want to be around people you dislike, right? And in a game where it's 100 days long, yes, you think of game-related things, but you also think of social things. And when they both are bad, sometimes you're like, it's an easy decision.
Yes, exactly. Now, another thing that was bad takes us to the 6th rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. Last time I said, whatever else he did wrong, he did this even more wrong. I'm not sure that's the case this time because he was so wrong in so many other areas. But he was also bad here, so it's a toss-up. One problem was that when he came right back into the house, it's not like people forgot he was a comp threat. He literally came right back in. And this was enhanced by him beating Jared and then winning his way back in, which, I mean, obviously he had to do it. You can't count it against him. Like, you're only here.
Yeah.
You only got to continue your game because you won these comps. But you better believe the other players remembered that. He's only here because he won those comps, Then, though, he also won at least one, if not two, competitions he didn't need to. In the first HOH competition after he got back, Matt was seconds behind him. And yet Cameron won it, even though they were supposedly allies at that point. Imagine Cameron letting Matt win that and showing him he trusted him in that moment. Would it have worked? Maybe not. I don't know. But maybe it could have shown trust. Now, still, even with that said, I can forgive that because he was just coming back. So who knows who he can trust? We discussed, as I almost flipped the camera off my table here, we discussed at one point how in your season, Cliff, he was knocked out into Camp Comeback, immediately came back in and won the HOH. And sometimes you got to do that because you might be right out the door again. So, yeah, that one I can't really blame. Fine. but he didn't need to win that veto. Did he really think Felicia was going to win it? And she was the only one who mattered, at the way he was thinking at that moment in time. He had to hold on to all the power, and he just didn't see how much of a threat that was making him.
It makes, yeah, it's very tough, right? When, again, Cameron had a really great ability to win competitions. I think that's what people loved about him, right? We love comp beasts. We love, underdog. I mean, yes. I mean, most viewers, though, I feel like find that, attractive to watch somebody play like that. And I just think, here's the thing, is that you paint yourself in a corner, right? When you continuously win these competitions, especially in Big Brother, where a lot of them are just kind of crapshoots sometimes, he was able to win the crapshoots. He was able to win the physical ones. He was able to win some mental ones. He had this ability to win competitions. And so what that does, it creates such a huge target on you. And it's almost like you can't stop it. It's like a caffeine addiction right there. You have to keep on re-upping the caffeine, because unless now, as you get further and further, your threat level increases. So this is, it's just,
we saw that with Michael last year.
That's,
and by the way, congratulations to Michael. He got married this weekend, I believe. So
yes,
congratulations. But yeah, we saw that once he started winning, he had to keep winning. But the thing was, with Cameron, he didn't have to win this one. If he would have sat back and realized, I don't have to win this veto, maybe it would have taken a little heat off of him. Maybe not. Probably not, but maybe. And there were other comps earlier that he could have not won. But he just always had to have control. He couldn't give it up.
No,
and and then on top of that, his comp abilities weren't the only reason people saw him as a threat. Earlier, he didn't have any allegiances, so they weren't worried, or they were worried about who he might target. We talked about that earlier. This time, he did have some supposed allies, but all of them still worried that he could turn on them because he said different things to different people and was playing people against each other, and it all got back to everyone. As we discussed earlier, he described himself as chaotic, even after returning. So when he tried to play like Corey and Blue against each other and they found out, why would they ever trust him again? When he nominated Felicia and told her he would never play with her, why would she want him around? And you could go through examples for almost all the players for this.
Yeah, I mean, you become a bigger threat, right, when no one knows where you truly stand. I mean, we've talked about this too with Nicole, right, when she became a threat in a wise because you didn't know if she was truly your ally. And the issue with Cameron, right, he could go any way the wind blew because he had no roots anywhere. And people also knew that, yes, he might be my ally today, but also it's a dangerous beast you keep, right? Because, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But once you take out that enemy, he becomes my enemy. And that was the issue with Cameron. It wasn't his competition ability. It was just his relationships he had in there. Like it's truly unique in the way that maybe not so unique, but I find that with Cameron, every rule really interconnects because underneath it, there could be a really good player, a Big Brother player. He has a competition abilities. We've seen on his off weeks where he's like, he can get along with people. There's something there. The issue is the game strategy that he has, where we've talked about brute force. And I mean, you may disagree with me, but
I don't know. I mean, I guess, if you strip away all the bad things, anyone can be a good
well, yes, yeah.
Does he, he has the ability to win challenges. In this era of Big Brother, especially, as we've seen, challenges are becoming more and more important. So from that standpoint, yes. From every other standpoint, he would need to make such drastic changes that I don't know that you can say, well, at his core, he could be a good Big Brother. He could if he fixed all these other things. My Hyundai could be a Jaguar if I completely replaced all the parts. So
yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it.
it has wheels and a gas tank. So, you know.
But I think the issue, so like for me, is I think at its core, right? I don't think necessarily that Cameron's a bad Big Brother player. But I just think it's the strategy he's taking to win the game, because his strategy, you can't win the game with a brute force strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, like. With a little bit more finesse, this man, like if Jackson Mickey can win my season, right, with all his grievances and his competition wins and whatnot, I feel like there's a road for Cameron where he can win if he just tried to finesse instead of just brute force it. But that's my opinion on
I
there.
wouldn't call Jackson Mickey a good Big Brother player either. There are many things I would call him, but you know, we won't go into that on this podcast. I'm sure you have your own thoughts on that. But like I said, there's a reason that even Big Brother doesn't show him in its own reel of winners. It doesn't show his face, and so. But I guess it comes down to semantics. Could Cameron be a good Big Brother player if he makes lots and lots of changes? But some of those changes are potentially integral to his personality. So, I mean, people's personality changes. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago, So, yes, can your personality change? Sure, it can. We would have to see, could he become a good Big Brother player? I suppose. But, my money is on you a long time before it's on him.
Let us know in the comments right now, because I know you already will.
Yeah.
What do you think Cameron is? Is he a good Big Brother player? Or what does he need to be the best Big Brother player out there?
I need to be encouraged. All right. And by they, I mean the Cameron stands.
The Cameron stands.
Yeah. All right. We can go to the 7th rule, which says to trust almost nobody. And, we could go back to what Cameron said about having told people too much because it applies here as well. But it was also appropriate for our Rule 2 discussion. After Red was gone, Cameron, and you mentioned this, Cameron essentially did trust nobody and tried to act completely on his own. And, well, we saw where that got him. When he returned, he tried to work with a few people, as he should. But he made the mistake, that we mentioned, of trusting the wrong people too much. In his case, I think everybody was the wrong person, but there are ways to work with people without bad-mouthing everybody else. He just couldn't help himself. He had to say bad things about Corey, Felicia, America, Blue, eventually even Bowie Jane. It was the same way that he previously trusted Jared while giving Jared all sorts of information to be used against him. He did the exact same thing again.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in there. Like, he just couldn't find the right mix of it, whether it was trusting too much on somebody or giving. I don't even want to say trusting. It was kind of a giving information, because I don't think he ever truly trusted anybody outside of that Red and slightly Sari at points too. He divulged information hoping that there was a gambit there that would work for him, but at some point there's so much information being tossed around, you don't know how much is true, how to trust somebody. And because he never truly trusted people in that beginning between that Red being evicted and to his first initial eviction, he wasn't able to create any strongholds in there. And so that's probably why also information got back around so much, because he had nobody to trust.
I mean, I do think he trusted Bowie Jane, which was why he was so pissed off that, but the thing was, he trusted her because he underestimated her, which, let's face it, all of us did. Or we'll see. Did we underestimate her? Did we estimate her appropriately? Leading up to that point, she basically had, done nothing. So I think that from his point of view, he expected her to continue kind of being at his beck and call.
Yeah.
And so can you call that trust? I suppose so, from his point of view. He sort of trusted Jag and Matt and just didn't see they were not really in an alliance with him. It was convenience only on their part.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to trust somebody who already voted you. I mean, we have, with the whole Jag situation, but I think we've discussed this part enough right there. He didn't trust enough, or he trusted too much.
Yes. So with that, it's about time to wrap things up. What are your final thoughts about Cameron?
Ooh, my final thoughts on Cam. Well, actually, are we going to talk about the jury phase
Oh
portion
my
with Cameron?
gosh,
Because this is our
I
first
forgot.
time.
See that sometimes happens when we get to the first time. I
Yeah, no,
forgot
you're good.
jury phase.
We had this is
Um,
probably the most exciting part of it, I think, in Cameron's game we get to
mhm.
discuss.
Well, you go ahead and take the lead on this one since you
Yeah, I mean,
remembered and I didn't.
I mean, what David and I do within the rules, we have an extra rule essentially once we
Mhm,
get to the jury phase of the portion of the game. And for Big Brother 25, it's taken a very long time for us to get
mm,
there, where we'll kind of discuss what do we think Cameron will have an impact in the jury and how do we think that will change the thing. So, right off the bat, and I think this is something we can talk about with some
mhm,
interviews we've heard and whatnot too. It seems like Cameron's putting a lot of credibility into Jag and Corey's game for the moves that were
mhm,
done. So I worry, and my concern is that where we have, let me see, 4 women still left in the house with Felicia, Sari, America,
You
and
don't
Bowie
expect him
Jane.
to give credit to a woman for playing the game, do you?
I know this is where I'm gonna get attacked by the camera, but I worry that he has continuously diminished women's in the game that
Mhm.
there are moves in here, and we talk about him trusting Bowie Jane. I
Yeah,
don't even you talk about I don't even know if it's trust, right? It's just him
right.
completely underestimating her ability to do anything.
Yeah.
Um, and you usually think somebody with a straight shooter, right? Somebody who goes like,
Mhm.
all right, he got out by Bowie Jane, but he's not giving
Yeah.
her any credit for that move. He's giving Jag credit for that move. And I just think it's this idea, this weirdness that he has in a sense that he's viewing this as a move that was taken on him on
Mhm.
people he's already tried to get out. Like Jag, he tried to get out, he
Yes.
got him out, and it's now Jag's move. It's
Right.
revenge. So my worry about him as a juror that there's certain people left in the house he's going to give a lot more credibility than their moves
Yeah.
probably deserve.
Yeah, the only woman that I can see him giving credit to is Cherie because he spoke so glowingly about her on his way out the door. Well, after he was out the door, because she also like gave him some advice and talked to
Hmm.
him and stuff like that. If it's like Cherie against Jag, I don't know which way he goes. I think that in the end he votes Jag, because in his mind, Jag is winning comps and
Hmm.
knocking people out, and so I yeah, I think he votes for almost any man, almost over almost any woman.
I think
Um,
I think America is dead in the water for him right now. Like I
yes,
don't
yeah,
see a world where he's going to give credit to anybody who hasn't won at least one competition in his
yeah.
eyes. So
So yeah, you're right. I think that it'll be interesting to see, how players take that into account. The other thing is, first juror, it's
yeah.
sort of like Survivor Ponderosa, the mayor of the jury here. They sometimes set the stage. Now, I don't know that he will set the stage, that anyone will care what he thinks once they get there. It kind of depends who follows him out the door. Like let's say that Felicia is next out or something, then she's not going to listen to him. It'll just be funny. If America's out the door now, oh, that's going to be terrible. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Now, is there anything that the players still in could have done differently in regard to him? I don't think so. They had to get him out.
Mhm.
They had to get him out. They wanted to get him out. They got him out once pre-jury to avoid just this situation, and that didn't stick. So, now that he's in the jury, not much you can do about it except ride the wave and try to kiss up to him when you get to the
Mhm.
end.
And I think one thing is that probably all of them did well is it wasn't a blind side. He knew it was coming, right? So you're not taking those bitter feelings into the jury. He knew it was basically coming. So in that way, I don't think he's holding any one person specifically as you betrayed me in this. I mean, yes, with
Mhm.
Bowie Jane, there, but I think also him knowing the fact beforehand, him getting, this is the
Right.
plot. This is what we're doing because we need to get you out, Cameron. I think he respects that. Where I'm hoping he won't be bitter of against anybody specifically for
Oh,
a
he
move
will
they've done against
absolutely
him.
be bitter.
You think I
Yeah.
think he'll have predisposed biases in play
Hmm.
that will make him value some people's move over other people. But I have to think I don't know. Maybe Cameron might be a little bit more try to look at the game as it is. But
Hmm.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm putting my money on bitter.
Yeah.
Um, so all right, well now for real, it's about time to wrap things up. So what are your final thoughts about Cameron?
Oh man, what a player he has been on this season, right? I mean, I think anybody, regardless of how you feel about him here and there, he has been a sight to see. Each week
Hmm.
has been really, he has had a main part in each week as the Big
Mhm.
Brother house has gone, especially for a house this long. Um, he fought his way back into the house. I always want to give credit to people who fought their way back in the house in some shape or form. He got there, he did his thing. He's played a game that I just don't think when you watch this type of game, it's a game that gives longevity. It gives great
Mhm.
viewership. It's a fun person to root for. But ultimately, he went home for his own acts, not because of what Julie Chen Moonves thought that he had no reason for it. He went home because of his social game, his threat level, and more than anything, that he just made himself kind of unlikable to be
Mhm.
around for the mass majority of the house guests. If anything, I think it's really impressive that he didn't have other people target him specifically and get him out way earlier in the game. I think if we make this
I
iteration,
don't know. I don't know when they could. I mean, he kept winning whenever they tried.
they try.
The only other time really they could have,
Was the
maybe there's,
Izzy?
well, Heisem.
Yes, yeah, yep.
But at that point, he hadn't shown that he was a competition beast, whereas Heisem had. Heisem was the one winning the comps then.
He was. I just feel like, regardless of that, I
Yeah.
feel like his threat level was
Sorry, I
still high
interrupted
enough.
your
No, you're
conclusions
perfectly,
there.
you're not wrong there.
Yeah.
And I mean, me and David could go back and forth about
Yeah.
talking about Cameron all day. This was already a long episode right here.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, right, this strategy, there's a good game player in Cameron. Whether you disagree with, I think there's a good game player in Cameron. He needs a different game strategy. If we had a
I think
Cameron
it
who
needs a
was
different
laid back,
game.
a different game, and just had a different level of ease, like the stress level
Mhm.
was gone. I mean, I think there's a world we see Cameron come back in a future one season, and he might even play even better. Again, objectively though, bad decisions, bad gameplay, but
Mhm.
he was exciting to watch.
Yeah, I don't see him coming back to another season of Big Brother, although they did protect him on the show enough that they probably could. I think, Challenge USA is definitely a possibility. But yeah, we'll see. Who knows? CBS and makes strange decisions. So all right. Well, earlier this week, Felicia ranted to Cherie of Cameron. He is not a master player. He has no personality. The only thing he has is the ability to win competitions. It's like she was trying to write this podcast for us, or at least for me, because she hit several of the high points. As far as Cameron himself, as we discussed earlier, he said his biggest mistake was speaking too freely with other people about other people. I noted that it wasn't the biggest, just one in a long list. And it's something he should have known about before coming to play anyway. In fact, he really should have known about all the things before coming to play, but so many of them seem ingrained in his personality, at least when he was in stressful game situations. It wasn't just winning comps and being a threat. It wasn't just over scheming and scheming poorly, because added to this was his terrible social play and the fact that basically nobody liked him in the house. Everyone came together to help convince Bowie Jane to put up Cameron. It takes a lot to get everyone pointed in a single direction like that, but Cameron spurred them all into action. As I said in Rule 5, if he could have been more laid back, fun Cameron that appeared in the few days preceding each of his evictions when the stress was off because he knew there was nothing he could do, I think he would have been much more successful, even with all the other issues. And if he'd also stopped doing or overdoing the strategizing, things would have really been different. But that wasn't who he was, especially when the stress was there. It wasn't, it was like he couldn't help himself. Even after being voted out once, he came right back in and did it again. He made a few modifications to try to make allies, but even those allies wanted him out, and they were just using him temporarily, especially once they saw how he was acting again. The bull in the china shop was back, and everyone else was tired of being pushed around. And that is why Cameron lost.
Well said. Well said.
All right. Well, next up is our spoiler-free predictions. But before we get to those, uh, remember that if you want our full spoilery thoughts, we are all over social media.
All over the place. We discuss Big Brother, Survivor, and all the other shows going on. On Twitter, I'm at the Obi Kabir. On Instagram, I'm at Obi Kabir. And on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. David is truly all over the place. I mean, he has put content out on TikTok, Instagram, everything. And you can find all his social media platforms on his link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg. And then you can find him on tech-based social medias like Twitter and Blue Sky at David Bloomberg. On TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, video platforms, as long and threads, is at David Bloomberg TV.
Yeah, since the beginning of Big Brother, I've been posting 3 or 4 videos per day at TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Occasionally, even more than that. We've, now got thoughts on what we see on Big Brother and Survivor. A lot of tidbits from the live feeds. Even, a few things from the Traders Canada, which is on now. And that'll continue with other shows. I haven't watched House of Villains yet. I probably will. We'll see if anybody, anything from there makes it onto my TikTok. But speaking of other shows, this, I've been doing now, this is, I think, the second week of doing double duty Why Blank Lost podcasting. And shortly before this podcast was released, my Why Blank Lost for Survivor 45 with Jessica Lewis as my co-host was released. And then on top of that, I'm recapping and analyzing the Traders Canada on the Tradar podcast. You can find the Tradar, that's TRAIDAR, on your usual podcast host or audio on YouTube. And that's a different type of podcast than this one. But of course, we've got all the Why Blank Lost you can handle right here in terms of, both Survivor and Big Brother at the same time. With that, it is time for predictions. And as I mentioned, they are spoiler free. So we won't discuss who the new invisible HOH is. So to that end, I wrote this before the feeds even came back on. The players have all been expecting a slip inside competition. That's all they could talk about. That clearly won't work for an invisible comp. You just can't have it. Since it's the comic verse, my immediate thought is the obvious: BB Comics. It's run individually, so it would fit into the invisible HOH idea. It seems almost too obvious, and I initially didn't see anyone else talking about it. So I don't know. Am I, was I crazy? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they do it for veto instead. But the real question isn't necessarily the specific comp, but whether it's physical, mental, or a crapshoot. They just had a mental / crapshoot last week. So I feel like it will be physical. Plus, let's face it, almost all of them these days are physical in some way or another. And making it physical is stupid for an invisible HOH because it's narrowed down.
Yeah.
If it's a physical comp, sorry, but Felicia and Suri are going to come out and nobody is going to suspect them of being the HOH. It's just not going to happen. However, this is Big Brother production we're talking about, and they often make stupid decisions. Anyway, I'm going to say that Matt wins HOH, in part because he's due. I just keep expecting him to win more. And since it's invisible, he can make the big move he's been wanting and nominate Corey in America. If he does, I'm sure it will get around that it's him for a couple reasons. One, the nominees will make it fairly obvious. And two, nobody in this house can keep a secret. So, but the thing is, it won't matter. Once they're up, it just doesn't matter. So following along with this, I think Corey has a pretty good chance of winning the veto. And therefore, I'm going to say we're going to say goodbye to America. And, I mentioned earlier, if she ends up in the jury house, I feel really bad for her stuck with Cameron. So let's hope I'm wrong.
I had my same targets as you, but I had a different way we got there. Okay. I actually think Blue is going to win this competition. And I thought because she needs to be fueled by Jared, and she also knows that people are pairing up right now, and I believe she knows that she's kind of on the bottom ring where she doesn't have many pairs right now. I think the easy immediate choice to get at is America / Corey. And I don't know how many more lives they have between them. I think one of them is potentially going home because at this point they've escaped very far in there, and I do think the threat level of a showman's continuously going in there, that's just scary to have. That's 2 votes together, so no matter who really truly wins this one, other than Corey and America, I think they're all going to be coming there. But I do think it's time for Blue to win.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who I actually picked for this time, who my prediction was. It looks, let me see here. I'm looking back at my notes from last time, and I said that Blue would be the first juror. I was thinking I had said Cameron, but no, I didn't. So yeah, there we have it. Our predictions.
Love that. And as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out our RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has so many patron-only podcasts for Big Brother and so many other shows that I've lost count. So jump on board and support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to our YX Lost feed page, or subscribe directly to the RHAP Big Brother feed at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrother. You'll find a ton of great content, the daily live feed updates, the Big Brother Stock Watch, and more.
And make sure that we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and the whole RHAP and Reality TV Wrap-Ups behind the scenes team for all the work they do, editing and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything they do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. And lastly, I can't end this without saying thank you to all the fans who've been watching and listening this week in and week out. I think we're going to have a lot of conversation on this week. You're going to probably disagree and agree with us. I know we're probably going to get a lot of comments saying, I think you guys are completely wrong. And here's the thing is, put them all out there. We want to hear all your thoughts. I know David probably doesn't want to hear all. I'm here to hear them out. I'll be the person there. Regardless, so we appreciate it. Stay interacting with us on all our social medias on here. Again, thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you, Ovi, for another great week. We will be back in a week. I will be back with Jessica probably a day earlier, and I'll be all over the place elsewhere in addition to that. So find me wherever you want to find me. But for this podcast, we will see you right back here in a week. Bye.